Hello and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. This, I guess you could call it your WW3 update. Is there really any other way to put it? It's obvious Joe Biden wants to be a war president because I can't think of anybody better I'd want leading my country when it comes to people possibly dying in massive numbers. Yeah, so to get started on this update, I'm going to start with this is actually from March 24th, but I think this ties into what we're seeing with the increase in the the arms race, of which we really shouldn't be tinkering with at this point in time. Mystery object found near Nord Stream pipeline could point to culprit. Yeah, there's a nice video, not video, there's a photo here of what it is that they're looking at. Russia says it is supporting efforts to recover forensic evidence from the underwater site of the Nord Stream sabotage blast, which may provide clues as to the culprit behind it. Because if Seymour Hersh wasn't convincing enough, they're going to find actual physical evidence to make their case. Images of a new mystery object, have emerged, with Moscow saying it is vitally important that it be carefully examined. The Kremlin on Friday briefing called the recovery and examination of the object critically important, as it has been discovered lying next to one of the damaged Nord Stream pipelines. And let's see here. This is the Kremlin. It is critically important to determine what kind of object it is, whether it is related to the terrorist act. Apparently, it is. And to continue this investigation, and this investigation must be transparent. Why are we relying on Russia to be transparent when it comes to investigations? This is such a weird, bizarre world. I just can't understand it. The Danish Emergency Agency has invited Russia's Gazprom, owner of the Nord Stream 2, to assist in salvaging the mystery object. It was actually Putin who was the first to publicly reference the object, and ongoing investigative efforts to ascertain what it is. Is there a quote here? The agency said it is possible that the object is a maritime smoke buoy, 40 centimeters tall and 30 centimeters wide, and that it does not pose an immediate safety risk. And I believe, let's see here. So they believe it might be a smoke buoy, but I did see where I think it was Putin saying that they believe it might have been receiving radio transmissions for the explosives. After Hersh's report, allegations that Russia bombed its own pipeline have largely died down, given also it would obviously run counter to Russia's self-interest. This was the dumbest story. I'm gonna, if I had to take a guess as to who in a meeting came up with, why don't we just say they bombed their own pipeline? Kamala Harris. I'm going to guess Kamala Harris because this is something that she would say. Well, if it's Russia's pipeline, wouldn't it make sense that Russia would blow up the Russian pipeline because it's Russian and Russia doesn't like Russia? This is just insane. All roads lead back to the nuclear industry. What is a Fukushima? What is Fukushima? Yeah, okay. So again, and this is true, all roads do lead back to the nuclear industry, as we're going to see with certain upcoming articles in this live broadcast. The CIA itself planted the Ukrainian partisan narrative in a friendly media outlets in order to shield the White House, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, so Russia's looking into this mystery object that they discovered. And yeah, so what happened with the gas pipeline? Well, it's leading up to, I don't know, sudden purchases of certain visible materials, if you will. And yeah, Russian military warns uranium shells will cause irreversible harm to all Ukrainians. Because it will. Every time I read these articles, I'm just like, why is Russia sounding like the stable head in the room here? Because we know what happened in Iraq with two wars where we dispersed a lot of spent uranium shells, and they now have a massive uptick in cancer. So yeah, let me get this straight, UK. Who's doing this along with I forget what the other country is, Slovenia maybe, but they're supplying these depleted uranium shells to Ukraine to use on Russian tanks invading their country. But Ukraine also has some of the most fertile land in the world, if not just Europe alone, but in the world itself, right? They can produce a lot of food. So you're going to take this uranium, hit tanks, disperse radioactive material into the soil, and completely kill your ability to grow foods for large amounts of people. Does anybody else see a problem with this? Yeah, the Russian military has weighed in on the UK's plan to supply depleted uranium tank rounds to Ukrainian forces, which has announced by the UK's junior defense minister, Annabel Goldie, on a Tuesday Parliament briefing. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, the head of radiation, chemical, and biological defense troops in the Russian armed forces, told the press briefing Friday that the weaponry will cause irreparable harm to all Ukrainians, whether civilian or military. Because, yeah, as I learned in a recent book, The Secret Lives of Timothy McVeigh, in the first Iraq War, Desert Storm, our troops were exposed to these rounds while carrying them in their tanks. And yeah, they every hour they were exposed to this ammunition equal to 50 chest x-rays. And they're stuck in these tanks for long periods of time. Not a good situation to be in. Despite the fact that the use of such ammunition with depleted uranium will cause irreparable harm to the health of the armed forces of Ukraine and the civilian population, NATO countries, in particular the UK, expressed their readiness to supply the type of weapon to the Kiev regime. As a result of the impact of the depleted uranium munition, a mobile hot cloud of a finely dispersed aerosol of uranium 238 and its oxides is formed, which, when exposed to the body in the future, can provoke the development of serious diseases. Nobody seems to care. He described that when compounds in this advanced ammunition seeps into the soil or disperses across the environment, it will be dangerous for people, animals, and the environment for a long time. Long time, like past our lifetimes. On Wednesday, Britain responded to Russian officials saying this constitutes escalation on the nuclear front, given that Kyiv will be handed nuclear components, and they're not wrong. It's basically saying if we can't have this land, we're going to make sure nobody else wants it either. Uh, Depleted uranium has for decades been used by NATO and was known for being used against Serbian forces in the late 1990s as well as in Iraq. It is 2.5 times denser than steel and thus can penetrate armor. For example, it can cut straight through tanks. China has previously condemned the use of depleted uranium by the Western Alliance. But it not only has radioactivity, but it's toxins to humans long after being dispersed on the battlefield. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova emphasized that this is an initial Kremlin reaction on Tuesday. These shells not only kill but infect the environment and cause oncology in people living on these lands, reference to cancer and other deadly ailments. By the way, it is naive to believe that only those against whom all this will be used will become victims. In Yugoslavia, NATO soldiers, in particular the Italians, were the first to suffer. Interesting. Then they tried for a long time to get compensation from NATO for lost health, but their claims were denied. Yeah, you're going to see a lot more of that too. So yeah, Russia's pretty pissed off about depleted uranium rounds, ramping up the nukes. Wyoming to house hundreds of new generation intercontinental nuclear missiles. Cowboy State Daily. Yeah. So again, more nuclear activity. So we have here new generation of nuclear missiles are coming soon to replace the Minutemen III nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles, some of which are located in Wyoming. From my understanding, a lot of the missiles that we do have, it's questionable whether or not they still work. The old Minutemen are the land-based leg of the nation's retaliatory defense system. The other two legs, which together are intended to deter countries from attacking us with their long-range missiles, include heavy bombers and ballistic missile submarines. But since their installation began in the 1960s, missile technology has greatly advanced, and the Minutemen III nuclear system is now woefully out of date. Yeah, I wonder how many of these have like vacuum tubes in them. So much so, in fact, that the system still uses inadequate floppy disk for some of its processes and procedures. Yeah, for those of you who don't know what floppy disk are, it's that little icon on your computer to save stuff. That's what that's based on. What kind? That kind of gives you a date of what we do. 90th Missile Wing spokesman Joseph Coslet told Cowboy State Daily. There's been some modernizations that have been done since then, but we're kind of at the tail end of the life cycle. The Minuteman III was only made to last 10 years, and we've made it last over 50. Yeah, until you hit the button and they're like, yeah. Use floppy disk. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, I don't think China and Russia has anything to worry about. It kind of gives you the date of what we do. The new Sentinels will not only require less maintenance, but fewer operating personnel. According to the Department of Defense, the operating budget is projected at $264 billion over the 50-year lifespan of the fleet. That is over and above the cost of building them. Details on the building costs were not readily available. Yeah, as the designs are not yet final. In all, there are about 450 Minutemen III missiles located in underground bunkers across multiple states. The Sentinel design proposal, which is examined in 3,000 plus pages in detail in a required environmental impact statement costing towards $33 million to prepare by itself, calls for building a new missile alert facility, or MAF, right on top of all the existing MAFs. The military Minutemen III ICBMs, meanwhile, will be replaced with Sentinels, yada yada yada. Okay, so we're building new rockets. That's awesome. I'm glad all those treaties that we signed just like went out the freaking door. Russian submarines excel as the Russian army fails. I wonder what this is referring to. The newest generation of Russian submarine forces are well-trained and operated advanced boats. As I noted this week, these forces offer great value to China's People's Liberation Army, training with and learning from the Russians. The PLA significantly improves its readiness to fight the U.S. Navy. In turn, even as the U.S. military must far more heavily focus its key air and naval war-fighting capabilities on China, it must also bear close attention to Russia. Yes, Russian ground forces might be facing annihilation in Ukraine. Still, Russian submarine forces prove an increasingly potent threat, as the U.S. Naval Institute reports. The commander of the U.S. military forces responsible for defeating North American testified that in effect on Thursday, Van Herk told Congress that Russia is probably 1 to 2 years away from being able to maintain persistent Yeltsin-class submarine deployments in both the Pacific and the Atlantic. It's good bet that the only, oh my God, what's with all these freaking pop-ups? Holy crap. The only dependent factor here is whether or not Russia can construct the next 2 boats of the Yeltsin class on schedule by the end of 2024. Russia currently has 4 Yeltsin class submarines in service. So yeah, they're going to have more, and then they're going to be completely, constantly on the present of our shores whenever the hell they feel like it. That's good to know. So yeah, more Russian submarines. Oh, and they're training the Chinese. Did you pick up on that? They're training the Chinese how to operate these type of nuclear submarines. Oh boy. U.S. expert panel to meet and determine which. Okay, that's something different. Zelensky. Yeah, let's get to this one. TheAutomaticEarth.com. Zelensky admits Ukraine already ran out of ammo. Again. US-led West mainstream media began reporting more accurately that the military strategic dynamics of the NATO-Russian proxy war in Ukraine since the start of the year, but the true test of their comparatively improved integrity will be whether they raise awareness about Zelensky's latest damning admission. Holy shit, what a sentence that was. In an interview with Japanese newspaper Shimbun, he candidly told his we do not have ammunition. For us, the situation in the East is not good. So he's telling this to a Japanese newspaper. I wonder why. This is a major revelation for several reasons. First, it proves that Russia is winning NATO's self-declared race of logistics in the sense that it is armed forces will still have ammo to continue fighting, while the West Ukrainian proxies already ran out of which their patrons provided over the past year. Well, that's not good. Aren't they supposed to be planning an offensive? How are they going to? Are they just like going to run and scream and wave their rifles in the air? I don't know how this is going to work. Second, the aforesaid aid that was already extended to this crumbling former Soviet republic exceeds 100 billion, which makes Russia's leading position in this race of logistics all more impressive. Third, Zelensky's admission adds credence to what the Washington Post recently reported regarding how poorly Kyiv's forces are faring in this conflict, especially in severe ammunition shortages that one of its sources spoke about. Fourth, preceding points drastically decrease the chances that Kyiv's upcoming counteroffensive will achieve much of anything, and actually make it increasingly likely that such a move would be an epic mistake that could ultimately lead to a decisive Russian breakthrough. So I'm just going to say, we've been warned. Okay. This is probably, if they go ahead with this offensive, regardless of the tanks that they're getting and the F-16, like all this stuff that they're being handed, if they don't have ammo for this stuff, good freaking luck. And finally, it can therefore be expected that Zelensky and his agents of influence across the West will beg for even more aid, arguing that the failure to pay up would risk making their prior investments in this proxy war all for naught if Kiev ends up losing to Russia. The problem, however, is that no amount of money can make ammunition appear out of thin air. I always wondered that. Yeah, since it requires a lot of time to scale production accordingly to meet these newfound exorbitant needs. On the one hand, doing so could contribute to his forthcoming begging campaign, but could also backfire if taxpayers start asking whether it's worth ponying up even more money if Ukraine already ran out of ammo, despite the over 100 billion in aid it's received thus far. They're funneling money is what's happening here. Like this isn't going towards the war. Like, yeah, US contractors are getting contracts to build stuff and to ship things over there. That's what a lot of this money is doing, but not all that money is going where it's supposed to go. This is Ukraine. If they excel at anything, it's being corrupt. Not only that, but as was earlier explained, no amount of money can make ammunition appear out of thin air. Quite clearly, fundamental changes to the Ukrainian armed forces are needed in order to indefinitely perpetrate this conflict, like the US is planning to do. But its fighters can't immediately transition to using exclusively Western equipment when they're used to operating Soviet era wares. This poses a dilemma since Russia keeps moving further ahead in this race of logistics as each day goes by. Objectively speaking, the military strategic dynamics are trending in the Kremlin's favor, which would ordinarily compel Kiev to seriously consider China's peace plan if it wasn't for its American overlords preventing it from doing so. So, this is the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine is not doing good at all. The mainstream media keeps lying to everybody as to what is happening over there. We're sending all this money. They're doing great. They're gonna have this fabulous offensive. And no, that's not what's happening. Other things I didn't find. I could have looked them up, but these were on the Canadian Prepper YouTube channel. So he was finding footage of large buoy systems. They're like a radar detection system that the US is floating out into the Pacific and possibly the Atlantic. I know for sure one of them was being pushed off of Hawaii. But it's this big dome looking thing that's supposed to detect intercontinental ballistic things if they're heading our way. So this is like a detection system that we're just now pushing out into the ocean to help give us a few minutes leeway as to notifying. Probably not us. It's not us. They're not notifying us. It's going to be like, hey, honey, get the kids and yourself and that place in the basement I told you about. Yeah. They're not going to tell us. They don't even have facilities here for us. So unless you have one of your own, good freaking luck when it comes to that. So yeah, that is what is happening. They're pushing these things out. And the other thing that he discovered was that we've got those planes in the air, the doomsday planes constantly in the air now in case something happens. Why are we spending money on that? Apparently somebody thinks something is going to happen. So yeah, two things we should be concerned about. There's definitely an escalation. We're making long-term plans for possibly a short-term devastating event. And another thing that came up, and I thought this was fascinating, was that East Palestine. Now, you think that this might be like a side topic, but there was something that came up with Squirrel Tribe where she discovered that there was a large amount of cobalt that was discovered in the area that East Palestine is in. Cobalt not only is used for expensive batteries and electronics and microchip facilities, ICBMs use cobalt. So why would we drastically need to move a large, not really large, why would we need to move a population out of an area to extract a mineral to be used for building certain things? Just a question. Why is that what is happening? Because cobalt apparently is used in the process for building these certain devices that go into the ground and go across the globe. And yeah, there's been a sudden rise in the sale of housing in East Palestine. I wonder why. But the question is, who the hell is buying this property? And what are they buying it for? Because I'm pretty sure that these people, like I was when I lived in a dangerous neighborhood, um, are they're going to be desperate to get the hell out of there because the longer they stay, the more likely they're going to get some type of illness. So yeah, cobalt. Again, somehow that probably ties into everything that we're seeing here, and it's fascinating, interesting, and freaking scary at the same time. But yeah, there's definitely an uptick in what is happening when it comes to the nuclear front of things, and it's not good. Whether it is the uranium uh, munitions that are being sent over to Ukraine, or if it's the new ICBMs that we're building here domestically. Things are speeding up, and it's almost like the governments on the planet are just like, yeah, this is the inevitable end, and we're just let's just start sprinting towards the finish line. So, oh, good lord. Anyways, that might be it for me today. There was one other thing that I wanted to discuss, but I don't think it really fits in with this video here. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm probably going to save that for tomorrow. So, anyways, that's about it for me today. Keep on typing.